This is coffee number 5. I'm your host, Lara Schmoisman. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to coffee number 5. And, we talk about brands and we talk about manufacturing and we talk about everything that is beauty related, fashion related, PCG related. But everything starts at the beginning. And the beginning is about the conception of the brand. And creating a brand, it has many moments. They have the moments that this is a product that I want to do. This is my unique ingredient or my unique factory or a textile in if you're doing a fashion line. But again, everything needs to match your brand. So today I brought you an expert, someone that I deeply admire because I think she's fabulous what she does with branding. And I met her a few years ago and finally I got her here. So thank you, Rebecca Bartlett, for being here today with us.
Thank you for having me.
I really love the work that you do for brands and also how versatile you are. And, you work with I know a lot of brands experts, but you can see, oh yeah, this is one more brand of that person. And they have a style. And the same would happen with designers. You can say, yeah, this was done by a designer. But I've seen your work and I've seen how you can really go deep and understand the DNA of the personality of your founders, and then you bring it into the brand too. Because I know some of your clients and I can say, oh yeah, this matches their personality, which is great. So before I let you talk, because I've been talking a lot. So tell me, how did you get into branding and how did you get to who you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I started as a designer. I'm from the New York area, moved to New York City to work in branding and design, worked for an agency there, and then moved to San Francisco about 20 years ago, fell in love with a guy, and really truly kind of moved from design to branding when I was the first senior creative person at a little startup in Bare Essentials that had been around for 35 years at Bare Essentials, Bare Minerals Future. And that was really like where branding clicked for me. At the time, Leslie Blodgett was in charge, and I had the keys to basically create and roll out a brand, starting, small and then eventually taking them global.
Mm-hmm.
After Bear, I wanted to go back to the agency side and wanted that to be my focus. And actually, really took my experience from that to help founders develop and launch their brands. That's mostly what Bartlett Brands is known for, basically partnering with founders with big ideas to bring them to life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's not an easy task to bring a brand to life because we have pre-established ideas of what we have with our brand many times. But is that the right thing to do for a target audience? Is that the right thing to do for a competitive market? Those are all things that you need to have and keep in consideration when you are doing your own brand.
Yeah, our process is very strategy driven. So while, you might look at our website and see beautiful packaging and great storytelling and all of that, it's really rooted in the part that you cannot see before all of that happened, which is developing the strategic insights to power the brand. Our work always starts with like a pretty deep work in consumer psychographics, mindset. So two different types of client profiles that come in. Some of them are innovation brands where like the founder comes, they have a big idea, they've managed to raise some money to fund the R&D of this idea. It might be a product idea, a new packaging development. We do a lot of work in sustainability. So they have this thing and they come to us and they're like, how do I bring this to life? Like, who is interested in this? What do we need to do to bring down the barriers if there's like a behavioral change? And so we're really helping them find like, okay, who is going to be the consumer for this? How do they think? What do they like? How do you really connect with them? And then we're building a brand around that. The other profile we get is like a founder who has maybe had a proof of concept in market with their product or idea, and then they're probably doing branding for the first time, but they have something, whether or not they acquired the consumer that they thought they would, like they do have a base consumer. So then we're tapping into, that consumer to really understand them. We're looking at the brand to see what's working. What is like, this is what's always so interesting about like this part of it is that the company, the team will be like, all of these things are so important to us. And then we talk to the consumer and they like don't even notice it. So like I was
Exactly.
just telling you before this started about this supplements brand that we work on, and like their team is so rigorous about the R&D and the science, very head led. The founder went to Yale. Like this woman is brilliant, and their consumer does not care about science at all. Literally, it's like gray noise, just shush, 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 shush. And so, it's like one of those things where like there's the tension. You want to talk about your R&D and your science, and the consumer just does not care. So, we are again like finding like what matters to them. How do we amplify that and be super focused on that? I think a pitfall for branding is often that there's a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah.
If you tell a lot of stories, if you think about what the consumer experiences of a brand, it's not like one singular focused touch point.
Oh,
It's like many touch points. And if you say something different across all of those touch points and you
yes.
appear as a different brand, you don't register. There's no like retention
Yeah, that's what I
with
call
the
a
consumer.
cohesive narrative,
Yes.
respecting each one of the dialects of each one of the platforms that you are communicating in.
Yes, exactly. Right. You have to nuance it for
Yeah,
the platform, but at the same time, you can't just like have a new brand book for that platform alone.
absolutely. People need to see the messaging cohesive. That's brand awareness. That they see your email, your social media, everything, your text messages has the same brand voice. And one of the things that we were discussing also earlier today was that how brands many times they are switching the narrative and their brand
Mhm.
voice, and that's where they get lost over time. To me, when I get normally a brand book, if I don't create a brand book, I say, okay, this is a brand book that was given to me, and this is what I need to stick to it. Otherwise, you need a rebranding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How
Yeah, we were
important? How
saying that
important?
like I feel like you are probably often given the unfortunate task of needing to put lipstick on a pig. When the branding isn't strong, they're looking to you to fix something.
And
And
there are a lot of things that I can fix, a lot of things I can tweak. And many times it's just that they're going after the wrong target audience, or
yeah,
it's just switching budgets, or where they need to put their money, where their people are, or refining things. But
yeah,
many times you can see founders say, oh, look at this brand, it's doing this so well. Why wouldn't do more like them? Because you're not them. You don't have their story, you don't have their budget, you don't have, you're not them. You need to create your own story.
yeah, yeah. No, I think, and like I was just saying that, creating this deep connection with the consumer and truly understanding who you are talking to, who that core is,
Mm.
even if there are other people in the audience that aren't exactly the same as that core target, you're
Mhm.
always talking to the core. And that messaging would resonate with that broader audience. Another example, kind of similar to this, when we branded Paula's Choice
Mhm.
prior to their acquisition. Um, we were doing like psychographic research on their core consumer. So the brand had been around for a very long time. And the branding was like a mess. Like it was a cult brand where like you had to sort of like be in the know to know because it looked like a hot mess. Um,
Mhm.
but what we found is like their core consumer really, really resonated with Paula Bagan, the naysayer of the beauty industry. And they essentially, their profile mirrored hers. Like they're fact checkers, they're practical people. They're like the people who, when we ask them, we're like, who plans the vacation? They're like, I do. Well, what do you do if you don't plan the vacation? I don't go. Like they are
Mm-hmm.
they are reading scientific research papers about product ingredients. So they totally mirror her. And we're like, okay, so that is the core consumer. You point the brand towards them, you talk to them, you are aware of everyone in the audience, and not everyone is going to
Yeah.
consume the level of detail that they are, which is where, we talk about how you sort of like nuance that tone depending
Mhm.
on the touch point, being aware that there are skimmers in there.
Yeah.
But the brand really is focused on like celebrating these super head led, fact checking, practical people,
Mm-hmm.
that do the work.
Yeah, but also one of the things you need to understand is that uh, you can have all this scientific information. You can be very knowledgeable as a brand. Doesn't mean that your target audience will be using that language. So you need to communicate things to them in a way that they can understand it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's where, yes. Yeah.
And
See?
I seen lately, I don't know if you've seen these trends, packaging with too much information. That
Yeah. Yeah.
it's overwhelming for the
Yeah.
consumer to try to understand everything.
hmm hmm Yeah, I mean, from the packaging strategy, sort of based on this insight that, like, Paula, she's this guide, it's wayfinding, she's trustworthy, and that, like, she's just going to tell it to you straight. The packaging, so again, which has to be appealing to the
Mhm.
broader audience of skimmers, people who don't actually care about the research. Again,
Yes,
it's just like very to the point. What is it? What does it do? How does it do it? The end,
exactly.
Yeah.
To me, packaging needs to be simply uh, simple and sexy.
Yeah.
But I mean, sexy is not for everyone. What is sexy for one person might not be sexy for another person. You need to know what makes tick your
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. Paula's choice is not sexy. Their consumer doesn't care about that.
No, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But I mean, they appeal them in some way to them.
hmm
The information is there, and also they do a really good job communicating the performance of the product. I think people are really moving into performance right now.
Yeah. Yeah. We're in a head-led era. I have been around for so long. I expect that we will swing back to a heart-led era. I feel like I've already seen this happen in the 20 years that I've been in this industry, where it's like we're so saturated with head-led brands, and like everyone's just trying to prove their point, like say it stronger and say it stronger than the next one. Where again, that you reach like maximum saturation, and then you're like, I want to feel something again. And
No.
we sort of see that like as culture changes and evolves, like post pandemic, people did kind of go back to wanting to feel, and so we do see this kind of like emergent of brands that are much more heart led. Of course, like we all still want to believe that we're not wasting our money on things that are, won't do anything for us. But, like a brand that I'm thinking about right now that we worked on, and we've been with since the beginning is Playground Sexual Wellness, whose founder I think was on your show.
Yes, she was.
Um, yeah, where it's like, like lube, not a very interesting category. Like by bringing in this like fun, the joy, the
Oh.
excitement, like this cute factor, it feels like, it's made for you, bringing in that kind of like
I don't think it's
degree of heart.
not exciting. I think it's one of those categories that is we don't talk about.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and we need to open the conversation. I think that you did an exceptional job on make it friendly, something that is an uncomfortable conversation. You made it friendly. You made it playful.
yeah. With Playground, we were like, okay, let's start, again, starting with like, who is the target of this? Like, who is this really for? It's for a woman who's 35 and up, probably was raised with, more conventional values than like Gen
Mhm.
Alpha, and like they might not, even though they want to be comfortable, like they might not be. And so we actually, the sort of like guiding North Star for design and language was called Dirty Mind, where it's
Mhm.
like it's basically not sexual unless you have a dirty enough mind to see the sex in it. And like that was our North Star for, the way the products are named, the way the copy is written, which is cheeky and fun, where it's
Mhm.
like you could read it at sort of its base level and you'd be like, I think it's about, you know, going and getting a milkshake. And you're like, well, actually, if you have a dirty enough mind, you can see that we're talking about sex.
Yes,
We don't
I
really
love
talk.
that.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's
Let
the
me
North
ask you a
Star, you
question
know?
because I've been listening to this conversation lately that there are a lot of retailers that they making comments on packaging or asking for packaging changes. What's your experience with that?
Oh, I mean, yes, we hear it. I mean, and Playground is actually a perfect example because we've heard both ends of the spectrum. They're too premium and subtle for Target, but like not premium enough for Erewhon. So, I think it's like taking it with a grain of salt, being open-minded, but not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. A lot of our brands are in Sephora or are Sephora headed. And because I'm in San Francisco and Sephora's in San Francisco, and we have connections there. I feel like we're always like swimming in the same pool as Sephora. And, Sephora will tell you what they would like to see. It comes from a
And
merchant.
how do you deal
Yeah.
with that? I mean, if they tell you, I would like to see this, but your packaging and you have a high MOQ of packagings.
I mean, like I said, I think it's like you take it with a grain of salt. Merchants don't know everything. They know their channel. But you have to look at it through a brand lens and through your other channels and what would be strategically, the right move. Like, I mean, I've heard feedback come from merchants that was like so irresponsible. Like we have not a brand that we worked on, but just some founders from the Bay Area that I know well were told by some merchants that like, oh, your brand, like you should be targeting 12-year-olds and like their product is not appropriate for 12-year-olds. And you're just like, you're gonna have to throw that one away. Maybe like take what you're hearing. The consumer is younger, a younger consumer might be into this, but like again,
And
you have to.
maybe also you need to make tough decisions. Maybe that's not the right place for your brand if you feel
That's
like
right. That's
the
right.
brand would
Yeah.
be get diluted there.
Yeah, I think that like, one of the important things about doing branding and having it articulated like it's the Bible that you're going to live by
Mhm.
is that, you're less subject to being swayed in the wind. And we've all known, brands and founders that like when the wind blows this way, they go that way. And when the wind blows that way, they go that way too. And like it really dilutes the brand and it makes a mess.
Well,
So
and that's what I call that. Then you don't have a brand. You have a
you don't
collection
have
of
a brand.
you have
No,
a
you're just
collection of
going with the wind.
products.
Yes.
You have a
Yes.
collections of products you sell, and it changes wherever you are.
Yeah. And one thing that's interesting about working with founders, there is like it's an art and a science. I love working with founders. It is like for me, we're a better fit with founders than with big corporate because um I feel like we have learned the art of getting them to see themselves in the brand and feel like they have had such a say in it that we've really brought their vision to life. It's a little bit of magic. Founders cannot be pushed to roll out a brand that sort of like gets smacked on them, if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
they have to be deeply connected to it because they live and breathe it, and they can't live and breathe something that is not authentic to them. So, and
That's
this
so
can be,
that's so interesting you're saying that because I was talking to one of my clients that we're doing rebranding for her, and she was and I say this brand is you, it's part of you. So if
yeah,
you're not connected to the brand, it's not gonna work.
it's not going to work. And sometimes the connection can be very abstract. So, like I was telling you about our client First Day Supplements,
Mhm.
I think before we started this recording, but
Yes.
and how the founder, like, she's absolutely brilliant. She is, a Yale graduate. She's very focused on science and R&D and doing right. And their customer doesn't care about R&D or science at all. Um, I think that if she were a brand, she would be a completely different brand than the brand that she created, which is it achieved a lot of success.
Mm-hmm.
The way that we wove her into her brand story that really feels like she's very connected to the mission is that actually through this idea of like health being passed down through generations.
Mm-hmm.
She's Chinese. Her parents and grandparents were part of the Great Chinese Famine, and so she saw like what poor nutrition can do on a generational level. And so we were really able to take that part of her story. We're like, oh, that's so relevant. What your customer cares about more than anything is having their next generation be healthier. So like we can make that
I love
the
that.
connection in the brand is not about science and R&D because again, they don't care. What they do care, they want their kids to like grow up and be smart and be successful and be healthy. And they're motivated and inspired by the idea that they have the control truly to like influence the health and wellness of their children.
So let me ask you a question. People get to work with you, they come to say, I need a brand. A brand. I'm creating a brand. I have these ideas for my brand. And you come in. Where do you take a client? And where do you get your data to justify your choices?
Yeah, so good question. I would say that a lot of our clients that are a good fit with us, they generally come with, their idea, their product, their asset, whatever it is to power the business, and come sort of prepared to go on the branding journey where like the future is unseen. I think they have very specific ideas, but we sort of like take them through this journey where like I think on day one where we kind of have them be like, let's not try to picture launch day yet because like what we might create might be not the thing that you ever imagined. We
Let's pause for a
proprietary, yeah.
second and let's put it out there right now that branding is just not a nice logo, or
Oh
it's
no, yeah, yeah. And like I said, so we're always rooted in these strategic insights. We do proprietary consumer research pretty much for all of our clients in some degree. Some of them, ones that have had some like proof of concept, they may bring something to the table. But we are doing proprietary research pretty much for every brand that we work on, developing the insights to power the brand, and then executing on those insights across, storytelling, design, assets, web design, like the whole package. And we're usually bringing our brands, and these are like long projects, Lara. Like they go on, for an innovation brand, sometimes it's 2 to 3 years to launch. For like a regular brand that's a little more straightforward, it's at least a year.
yeah, no,
So like I tell them when we're dating, it's kind of like, when we're gonna like decide, are we gonna go on this journey together? We have to make sure we like each other, first of all.
yeah.
Because I'm like, be prepared. You're gonna see me and my team like every week for the next like 52 to 80 weeks. And they're like, how could that be possible? It's like, well, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it takes
Yeah.
a lot of work to do a branding right, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of people involved. It's just not one man show. To
No.
do
Yeah.
things right, it takes a lot of research.
Yeah. And I think, in the brand building part of this, like I was saying, like you I think companies and clients, on day one when it may be a founder and a core team, 5 people, like having this North Star, which is essentially a deck, of strategic insights, core fundamentals of the brand, and then outward facing parts of the brand, like the language, visuals, that, they walk away with this deck for reference to
Mm-hmm.
roll everything out. It's also important for bigger brands where it's like, you see over time these brands like they get to 20 people, and it's like if you ask everyone at the company what the brand is, they'll tell you it's something different.
Well, something we've
So
been talking in the past and in the podcast, and I I used to bring, one of my first jobs in the US was to bring in international movies to the States and Canada. So we had to create all the art direction. We had to create not only subtitles, many chapter selection, well, was the times of the DVD, but we have to create all these fun things. But it's so important to translate right that information and the artwork of the movie, because you need to translate it so it's appealing to the culture, but you cannot have a different brand. And it's something that I'm seeing now a lot, like in marketplaces like Amazon, that we have to create listings and different listings for each territory. But at the same time, you need to be true to your brand.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like making sure that everyone in an organization deeply understands the brand and then, has the wherewithal to translate it to their market or to their touch point is super important in
And
having
that
a successful rollout.
your values are still the same in the United States and in UK and Germany.
Right, right.
But at the same time, you're appealing, and also you cannot use many times taglines. You cannot not use the same tagline in another language. It doesn't work.
Right, right. Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. So how do you deal with creating brands and make sure that it will work in expansion with other territories?
Yeah, I mean, usually when the brands that we create end up being global, it is like, so for example, when we rolled out Paula's Choice, um, yeah, I mean, at some point, like you don't involve every every region in the entire process, but once you get to where you have a brand, like we did a lot of meetings where like presenting the brand, fielding questions, and then they did go away and translate it to their different regions. And then actually we were hired like 2 years later. We've worked with them twice now, first for the original branding. And then later it's like it had rolled out, came back, and they wanted to sort of work on tightening up the language. So we created an editorial style guide and all of that. And it was essentially because they took it, they learned, they found this is what's difficult in translating and communicating this globally. And then they were sort of part of this second round of tightening up the language and then creating like a pretty robust editorial style guide. We did it obviously in English, but then like each region could really translate that for their own needs. I think truly in the end, it was like, landing some of these nuances of the brand that everyone could really understand. And then again, take it so it made sense in that region.
That
So like,
totally
yeah.
makes sense. And I have one more question for you before we go, because a lot of brands, they start with 2, 3 SKUs, and then they need to evolve on that, and they grow in the amount of skills that they have. I'm always a believer that we need to create a design that it will work for all ours, of course, with different modifications, but everything needs to be in the family of. You cannot something completely going off brands. So how do you deal with that unknown of what will be the next SKU, because you don't know if it's going to be a tube or a pump, or you don't know what's a format because it depends on so many other factors.
Yeah. We usually, when we do the launch assortment, we usually create hypothetical future SKUs. We're not going to roll them through production, but in our like conceptual design, just to make sure that like the color system, the navigation can really work for like you're going to take this and then you're going to create something that's like this, or you're going to create something like this, and we would have like a roadmap for when you create that. And that way it's like in the future, when you do create something, we do have this point of reference of like, this is how this design system and communication system flexes for, a new collection or just like a SKU extension or new variants. So we do actually, we create these hypotheticals for every brand that we work on for like package design. We create them up front. And then of course things do change, in the example of first day of the supplements brand when they launched. And for the first several years, it was supposed to be for kids only. And then the second time they came back to the studio, they're like, we're pivoting to the whole family, which is like a pretty significant shift in terms of package design and certainly of communication. So, changes do happen. You try to get ahead of as many of them as you can. If your business changes,
yeah,
see you again. If your business doesn't change, and you do have this sort of roadmap for how to roll out.
And one more question, I promise.
Yeah.
How often do you think that the brand needs to revise their rebranding?
I mean, we always say we hope to not see you ever again. I think the times that we launch a brand and then do like a brand refresh is truly more around growing and learning, probably less of like this was the wrong brand. So yeah,
well, then sometimes styles get a little old, or that they need a facelift.
Right. Well, I mean, we always say like we're building the brand to stand the test of time. The core fundamentals of the brand are based in timeless truths. So the look and feel, the language, like those things might evolve, or a brand might need to pivot, and so we would see a client again under those circumstances. But ideally, like there are enough core fundamentals in there that like there are things you can hold on to carry into the next chapter. Like again, these are brands not built, they're not it's not products. It is a brand, which is like this higher order of messaging based in, what is the purpose of all of this? What is the core DNA? And those things rarely change.
Let's talk about the case of Clinique, for example.
Oh yeah.
Clinique is a classic.
Clinique is a classic.
When it came to market, it was, wow, the 1, 2, 3 steps, they make it so easy for us. I was a teenager at the time, and it was amazing. But today, it didn't catch up with the new generations.
They didn't. I know that is one where like, oof, this is tough for them. This multi-generational factor is also tough. So one, the things that are in their core DNA, the dermatologist backing and safe, all of that, like it's totally table stakes now. So that's challenging. And then the other thing is like this idea of being a multi-generational brand where you can like appeal to mom with her.
I think that I think that
teenagers,
technology is too advanced today, and there are too many players who try to appeal to everyone.
Yeah. I mean, here's my hot take. I don't think in this day and age now, really in like the last 5 years, as we see that like teens are in on this, they can shop for their own things. They do not want their mom's brand. If I were Clinique, I would pick a lane. If you want to be for moms, you go after it. You go after it hard with the R&D, and like you stop trying so hard to appeal to like the youth and just deliver, grow your market for that person, or go the other way. Although I do think going the other way, just because it's such an old brand, I don't know. I think that would be a lot more work.
Yeah, but it's an
interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting and complex problem. I mean, thinking about Bare Essentials, Bare Minerals, talk about brands that haven't caught up with the times. Like they didn't evolve fast enough. And I don't even did they even exist anymore? I don't even know.
That's a good question.
Something that was like a unicorn in the early 2000s is literally gone.
Yeah. And that didn't test the times.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This was lovely. And I hope that you guys out there, they were able to get good insights.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you for being here. And to you, I will see you next week with more coffee number 5. Find everything you need at laraschmoisman.com or in the episode notes right below. Don't forget to subscribe. It was so good to have you here today. See you next time. Catch you on the flip side. Ciao, ciao.